Hi everybody. This video is to continue our lesson in value drawing, and more specifically, applying the media. That basically means how you actually do a value drawing. The word media is plural for the word medium, which is an art term for what type of art you are doing. What materials do you use? One medium would be sculpture, another painting, another drawing. In this screencast, the essential questions you need to know are: what is tooth? What is the pressure scale? What is layering? How do you blend? And what is a good workflow? So what's tooth? Well, tooth is the texture of the paper that you're drawing on. Paper that's great for drawing is a paper that has a strong tooth, kind of a sandy texture to it. An example of poor drawing paper would be printer paper. The tooth of the paper is what grabs your media. And the more tooth there is, the more it can soak up that media. So if you want a very bold and rich looking value drawing using graphite, you want to use a drawing paper that has a strong tooth in it. It allows you to get darker and lighter and blend a whole lot more. You can tell if a paper has tooth by not only a sandy texture, but the look of it. After the values have been applied, you'll see kind of a sandpaper, sandy texture. It makes everything uniform and easier to distribute. When the tooth of your paper gets full, it won't take really much more lead. Now, the thing to know about the tooth of the paper is that it can get damaged. The major ways that tooth is damaged from the beginner is erasing, oil from your hands, and then compression. Erasing strips the tooth from the paper, and then it won't take lead the same as the rest of the surface. So if you've erased a lot and then go to apply value over the top, it's going to look a little bit funny in that spot. So try to erase as little as possible. Oil makes it so that the tooth resists any other media to it, and that's why you always want to take a sheet of paper and protect your work as you work. Some people draw with gloves on, others keep a little bridge to keep their hand off of the paper. I have some of those. I just use printer paper when I draw. That keeps your lead from smudging, keeps it from looking nasty, and it protects the piece from hand oil. That's just good craftsmanship. And finally, compression. Compression is when you try to smudge with your finger or a paper towel or a blending stump, or you've pushed really, really hard and it's now taken all those peaks and valleys in the paper and smashed it down. It won't take any more of the media, or it'll take it really weird. So always work light and then gradually build up using more and more pressure from your tool. What is the pressure scale? Well, good craftsmanship and control involves knowing how to use your tools as well as when. The pressure scale goes from 1 to 4. Pressure 1 represents your lightest touch, like you're barely caressing the surface of the paper with your tool. You will get very little to no lead from doing that, and that is as light as you want to go. You use this for your lightest values and your pre-drawing scaffolds. Pressure 2 is how hard you push when you write a sentence. It's also how hard you push about when you're applying your mid-tone. Pressure 3 is when you're applying your darkest values. Think of pressure 3 as the absolute hardest you can push on your paper before your lead breaks. And pressure 4 is when you've pushed too hard. Your lead has broken or you've torn the paper. And just some notes about the pressure scale: you'll likely be spending the most of your time at pressures 1.5 to 2. Because remember, midtone accounts for about 40 to 60% of a value drawing in balanced light. And you're building up layer upon layer upon layer of lead. And to do that, you need a light touch. Another thing to know is that pressure 3 damages the tooth. That's why I always encourage you to work light to dark. If there's an area that you know is going to be a dark black shadow, save it for last when you're towards the end of your project. That's because it's easier to add dark than to take it away. What is layering? Layering is how you apply your media. And you've heard me say it earlier, you actually apply your media multiple times in the same spot to build up layers so that you can achieve strong, saturated, bold values. In other words, you shade in the same spot over and over and over. Well, layering gives you more control. It also smooths the gaps in between your pencil strokes, so that when I go to look at your values, I won't see several individual little strokes of the pencil. I will see a smooth, uniform mass of texture, almost as if you have painted it on there with a brush. Layering is also very professional, and it shows strong craftsmanship in your work, and it's also how I grade your work. A layered value looks different from a value that is not layered. And for strong, realistic work, you use layering. To layer, once again, begin at pressure 1 with your lightest values, and as you need to darken the area in certain spots, increase it another step, and then another step up. So how do you blend? Now to blend your values together, you can actually smooth them out together, not with your finger, not with a blending stump or a paper towel, but with the actual lead of your tool. You do that by pushing in between the pressures that you used for those values. For example, if you want to blend a midtone in with a light pressure 1 value, you'd push about 1.5, 1.75 about in there, in between what it took to lay those values down to begin with. So you're always mindful of how hard you're pushing with your tool. Now, do not smudge whatever you do. If you've been taught to smudge in older art classes, ignore it, ignore it. The reason for that is that it strips the tooth of your paper, it adds hand oils, it also reduces the darkness of your values, it's very uncontrolled and imprecise. It's a rushed shortcut, it looks very sloppy, you'll have fingerprints all over the place. It's the look of a student who wants to blast through the assignment. Things of high quality take time, and you will have enough time in this class if you use your time wisely. What is a good workflow? Workflow simply means, how do you get the job done? How does your work progress from beginning to end to get to the finished product? Now, strong success and strong products are tied to a strong workflow. And now this is the workflow that I teach you in this class to create a value drawing. And it's in 7 easy steps. So step 1 is to pre-draw your piece at a pressure 1, very light. You've heard that in other screencasts. Step 2 is to plan your lighting. You heard this in the previous screencast as well. How can you know where your values go if you don't have your light source set? Now, planning your lighting also involves breaking down your percentages of your different values. Like you saw me draw on those 3 sphere drawings, I had little lines there kind of marking where each value was at, where the highlight, midtone, and shade was. Break your percentages down, plan where your highlights are at, where's your cast shadow, and so on. And you're all doing this at pressure 1. Again, these lines disappear as you work. Step 3. Layer your lightest values in at pressure 1. And if you've planned where your highlights are, work around them. Don't let your lead go in there. Step 4. Layer in your midtones at pressures 1.5 to 2. Now, midtone, once again, is 40 to 60% of your piece. You'll likely be working very delicately at this stage for the majority of your assignment. Next, layer in your shades at pressures 2.5 to 3. Some students I've had don't even apply our dark shadows until the very latter part of the assignment. Now, here's a little note. You should be blending your values together as you go. All right, step 6. Add detail. Once all your values are plotted down, it's a nice, smooth, black and white piece. You need to add your detail. That would be like, freckles, hairs, wrinkles, nuts and bolts, scratches, textures, which you'll learn how to do textures in a future screencast, and so on. You are painting in a big wide array of smooth values, and then you draw on top of that using your pencil to create textures and effects. You also at this stage want to increase your contrast. And again, contrast just means difference between light and dark. If your piece is very washed out and gray, then you need to increase the contrast. One of the ways to do that is make an intentional mistake in the darkest area of your drawing. Find the darkest, blackest area of your drawing, and then try to make a little nick with your pencil in that area, a little black mark. And then your job is to shade that little mark away. You're essentially adding a new layer of dark in there, and that increases the dark range and makes the light range even higher as well. And finally, step 7. Clean up any stray scaffolding that might not have been shaded out. Clean up any smudges, clean up any damage, and make your work presentable so that you can turn it in. Answer the questions at the end of this lesson for credit, and I look forward to seeing you in class.